The evening sun was sinking behind the distant hills, painting the sky with soft orange and pink colors. A cool wind carried the scent of dry grass and earth across the quiet plains. Far away from the city, a young woman named Clara walked alone along a dusty road. Her clothes were torn, her steps weak, and her face pale from pain and exhaustion. She looked like someone who had been through a terrible storm. Not just the kind that breaks trees, but the kind that breaks hearts. Clara had once been full of dreams. She grew up in a small town, working in her father's workshop, fixing things and helping him make wooden furniture. She loved shaping wood with her hands, feeling the smooth surface as she sanded it down. Her hands were her pride. They created beauty out of rough timber. But life doesn't always stay kind, and Clara's life took a turn that no one could have predicted. One winter evening, as she was returning from delivering furniture to a nearby village, a truck came speeding down the slippery road. The driver lost control and the vehicle skidded toward her cart. She tried to jump away, but the crash was too sudden. The wooden cart broke into pieces and Clara was thrown to the side of the road. When she opened her eyes, pain shot through her arms. Blood covered her sleeves. She screamed, but her voice was drowned by the wind and the roar of the truck as it disappeared into the darkness. The next few hours were a blur. She tried to move, but her body felt numb. Her hands had been crushed badly. There was no one around. The night grew colder and her tears mixed with the dust on her face. She waited, hoping someone would come, but no one did. Finally, after what felt like forever, a farmer passing by found her and rushed her to the nearest hospital. The doctors did their best, but the damage was too severe. To save her life, they had to remove both her hands. When she woke up, her first reaction was disbelief. She looked down and saw bandages where her hands used to be. She couldn't speak. She just stared at the ceiling, feeling her world fall apart. The doctor spoke gently, but his words were like distant echoes. She had survived, but her life as she knew it was over. The tools she once used, the craft she once loved, all gone in a single night. Her father, an old and kind man, stayed by her side for days. But deep down, Clara saw the pain in his eyes every time he looked at her. He tried to smile, but his heart was breaking. After a few weeks, they went home, but things were never the same. The people in town pitied her. Some whispered when she passed by. Others avoided looking at her altogether. The workshop stayed closed, and silence filled the house that once rang with the sound of her laughter and hammering. Depression began to eat away at her. She felt like a burden, not just to her father, but to everyone. Nights became long and cold, filled with thoughts she tried to push away. Sometimes she would stand near the window, watching people live their normal lives, and tears would fall quietly down her cheeks. The world kept moving, but she felt stuck in darkness. One morning, she decided she couldn't go on like this. She left home quietly, leaving behind a short note that said she wanted to find peace. She walked toward the plains, the same road where her accident had happened. Her father woke up and found the note, his heart pounding with fear, but she was already far away. Hours passed. The sun was high, and the ground burned beneath her bare feet. Her arms ached from the weight of her body. Her head spun from hunger and thirst, but she didn't stop. She wanted the pain to end, not by choice but by surrender. She didn't realize how far she had gone until she reached a wide, empty field. There, her strength finally gave out. She fell to the ground, tears blurring her vision. She whispered a soft goodbye to the wind and closed her eyes. But fate wasn't done with her yet. A few miles away, a cowboy named Ethan was riding home after a long day of herding cattle. He was a tall man with a calm face and sharp eyes that noticed everything around him. He lived alone on his small ranch, miles from the nearest town. That day, he felt something pulling him toward a different path, the one that led across the open fields instead of his usual route. He didn't know why, but his heart told him to follow it. As he rode through the quiet plains, he spotted something lying on the ground near a dry bush. At first, he thought it was just a bundle of clothes, but as he came closer, he saw it was a woman, pale, motionless, her body weak and trembling. Without thinking twice, he jumped off his horse and knelt beside her. Her lips were dry and her skin was burning from the sun. He gently lifted her head and offered her water from his bottle. Clara's eyes opened slowly. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. She saw a stranger's face lined with worry and kindness. "You're safe," he said softly. "Don't try to move." She wanted to speak, but her voice barely came out. "Why," she whispered, "why are you helping me?" Ethan looked at her with a quiet smile. Because no one should be left alone to die. He carried her carefully onto his horse and rode back to his ranch. It was a small but warm place, surrounded by the smell of hay and the sound of wind brushing against the fences. He laid her on a soft bed and made her some soup. For the first time in weeks, Clara felt warmth, not just from the food but from his kindness. Over the next few days, Ethan cared for her as if she were family. He cleaned her wounds, gave her water, and talked to her when she felt too lost in silence. She learned that he had once been a soldier, and after losing friends in the war, he moved far away from people. He understood pain, the kind that doesn't show on the outside. Maybe that's why he didn't ask many questions. He just helped her heal, little by little. Clara began to open up. She told him about her life, her accident, and how she had lost everything. Ethan listened patiently, never interrupting. Sometimes he'd share small stories about his ranch, the horses, the changing seasons, and the beauty of the plains. His voice had a calm strength that made her feel safe. Every day she found herself wanting to see him again, to hear that gentle tone that reminded her life still had meaning. Days turned into weeks. Clara's body grew stronger, though her heart was still fragile. She couldn't do much without her hands, but Ethan never treated her like she was helpless. He built special tools she could use with her arms. He taught her how to feed the chickens by balancing the bucket on her elbows, and how to water the plants using a long stick tied to her shoulder. It was hard at first, and she often cried out of frustration, but Ethan would simply smile and say, "You're doing great. Don't give up yet." For the first time since her accident, she laughed, not out of happiness but out of surprise that someone still believed in her. His words began to rebuild her broken spirit piece by piece. She started to feel alive again, even though her life looked nothing like before. As the sun set over the plains one evening, Clara sat by the window of Ethan's small house, watching the light fade into gold. The world outside was still full of beauty, even after all she had lost. She turned toward Ethan, who was fixing a saddle near the doorway, and said softly, "Maybe losing my hands wasn't the end. Maybe it was just the start of something new." Ethan looked up, his eyes gentle. "Sometimes," he said, "life takes things away to make space for something better." Clara smiled faintly. For the first time in a long while, she believed that maybe, just maybe, he was right. The days on the ranch passed slowly but peacefully. Clara had never known such quiet before. Every morning, the first thing she heard was the soft sound of horses neighing and the gentle whistle of the wind through the open fields. Ethan would already be outside, feeding the animals or fixing fences while she watched from the window, the morning sun glowing on his hat and shoulders. There was something comforting about the rhythm of his life, simple, honest, and full of care. Clara began to help him in small ways. Even though she had no hands, she found ways to contribute. Ethan had made tools just for her, spoons with straps that fit around her arms, brushes she could hold with her elbows, and even a wooden frame to help her write by holding a pencil between her arms. At first she made mistakes and felt embarrassed, but Ethan never laughed or got impatient. Instead, he encouraged her with quiet strength. "Every small step matters," he'd tell her. "You don't have to do everything at once." His patience touched her heart more than words could explain. Slowly, she started to see herself not as broken, but as someone learning to live again. The pain in her heart began to fade, replaced by a sense of purpose. She began to take care of the small garden near the porch, planting flowers that grew bright and colorful under the summer sun. Ethan often teased her, saying, "Looks like these flowers bloom only because you smile at them every day." Clara would laugh softly and say, "Maybe they're just kind, like someone else I know." One afternoon, Ethan took her on a ride through the open plains. He helped her onto the horse, guiding her carefully. The wind brushed her face as they rode, and for the first time in months she felt free. The golden grass stretched endlessly around them, and the sun shimmered on the horizon. Clara closed her eyes and let the wind carry her worries away. Ethan glanced at her and smiled. "You look happy," he said. "I almost forgot how that feels," she replied, her voice soft but full of hope. When they returned to the ranch, Ethan made dinner and they ate together by the fire. The warmth of the flames danced on their faces. He spoke about his late parents who had once owned the ranch and how they had taught him everything he knew. "They always said kindness is the best kind of strength," he said. Clara looked at him with admiration. You must have learned it well, she whispered. Over time, their friendship grew deeper. They became like two lost souls who had somehow found each other in the middle of nowhere. Ethan taught her to paint with a brush tied to her arm, and even though her first paintings were rough, he hung them proudly on the wall. "These are beautiful," he'd say, and she would blush, shaking her head. "You're just being kind," but he meant it. Every stroke told a story of courage and healing. One evening, a letter arrived from Clara's father. Ethan found it in the mailbox and handed it to her. Her eyes filled with tears as she listened to Ethan read it aloud. Her father's voice came through every word, worried, broken, yet full of love. He had searched for her everywhere. He begged her to come home or at least send a sign that she was alive. Clara cried silently. She missed her father deeply, but she was afraid to face her old life again. "I don't want to be seen as a burden," she said. "I don't want pity." Ethan placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "You're not a burden," he said. "You're stronger than most people I've ever met." The next morning, she made a decision. "I want to go see him," she said. Ethan nodded, though his heart felt heavy. He had grown used to her presence, the laughter, the quiet conversations, the light she brought into his lonely home. But he didn't stop her. Instead, he helped her pack and saddled his horse. Together, they rode to her village. When they arrived, people stared in surprise. Many had thought Clara was gone forever. Her father came running out of the house, tears streaming down his wrinkled face. He hugged her tightly, whispering her name again and again. Ethan stepped back, letting them have their moment. The reunion was filled with emotions that words could not express. Her father thanked Ethan with trembling hands. "You gave me back my daughter," he said. Clara stayed home for a few weeks, helping her father as best as she could. The villagers who once pitied her began to admire her courage. She told them about Ethan, how he had found her, saved her, and taught her to live again. Her story spread across the town, and people started visiting her for advice and inspiration. She began teaching small children who couldn't afford school, showing them that life could still be full even when things go wrong. Her house, once filled with silence, now echoed with laughter again. But deep inside, she missed the open plains, the quiet evenings by the fire, and the cowboy who had shown her kindness when the world had turned away. One morning, as she looked at the hills in the distance, she realized she had found her reason to live. But that reason was also tied to the man who had given her hope. A few weeks later, she decided to visit the ranch again. Her father, seeing the light in her eyes, smiled and said, "Go where your heart feels at peace." With his blessing, she rode back, this time with a neighbor's help. The journey was long, but her spirit felt lighter with every mile. When she reached the ranch, Ethan was mending a broken gate. He looked up and froze in surprise. For a moment, he didn't believe his eyes. Clara stood there, smiling shyly, her hair shining in the sunlight. "I thought you were gone for good," he said softly. "I was," she replied. "But then I remembered that home isn't always where you're born. Sometimes it's where someone teaches you how to live again." Ethan smiled. That quiet, gentle smile she had missed so much. "Welcome home," he said. From that day on, life at the ranch changed. Clara stayed, and together they built a new routine. She took care of the garden, painted the walls of the small barn with bright colors, and helped Ethan manage the farm with the special tools he had designed for her. Every day felt like a step toward something better. The pain from the past never fully disappeared, but it no longer controlled her. Sometimes when the sun set over the horizon, they would sit together on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of gold and pink. Clara would whisper, "You changed my life." Ethan would look at her and say, "No, Clara, you changed your own life. I just showed you the way." Years later, Clara's story became known beyond the small town. People came to meet the woman who had lost her hands but found her strength again. Some called her the brave lady of the plains, while others simply said she was proof that kindness could heal even the deepest wounds. She always smiled when they asked about the cowboy who had saved her. "He didn't just save me," she would say. "He reminded me that even when life takes everything from you, it can still give you someone who helps you find yourself again." The ranch remained their world, quiet, filled with the sounds of animals and the whisper of the wind. Every evening they watched the same sun dip below the hills, grateful for the second chance that life had given them. Clara no longer thought about what she had lost. Instead, she thought about what she had found: peace, strength, and a love that asked for nothing in return. and whenever the wind passed softly across the plains, it carried her laughter, gentle, strong, and full of life, a sound that told the world that hope never truly dies, even in the darkest of times.